It was the kind of small American town where nothing ever really happened, or at least, that's what people told themselves to sleep at night, where the streets emptied by sundown and the faint glow of porch lights were the only reminders that life still lingered in the darkness. And it was down one of these quiet streets, just after dusk, that 12-year-old Emily Larson was last seen, clutching her worn pink backpack, her sneakers scuffing the pavement as she hummed a tune from music class, completely unaware that this ordinary walk home from school would be the last time anyone would hear her laughter echo through the neighborhood. Because halfway between the school gates and her front door, she vanished, as if the earth itself had swallowed her. No scream, no trace, no witnesses, just gone. And by the time her mother, Claire, noticed the clock blinking past 4:30 and realized Emily was late, the panic was already clawing at her chest, because Emily was the kind of girl who followed every rule, who called if she was running late, who never wandered, and Claire's frantic call to the police triggered what the town would later describe as the largest search they had ever seen. With neighbors combing the woods, helicopters buzzing overhead, bloodhounds sniffing at the air, yet despite every desperate effort, the only thing they found was silence. A silence that grew heavier with each hour that passed, until the first night arrived, and with it, something far stranger than anyone could explain. At exactly midnight, a knock echoed at the Larsons' front door, soft but deliberate, and when Claire stumbled downstairs and opened it with trembling hands, her breath caught in her throat because there, sitting neatly on the welcome mat, was Emily's pink backpack, the one she'd been carrying when she disappeared, the one that should have vanished with her, but now it was back, zipped tight, spotless, as though it had never touched the ground. And when Claire opened it with shaking fingers, she found every single item inside: the lunchbox with half a sandwich, the binder with doodles in the margins, the pencils sharpened just the way Emily liked. But no Emily and no note, only the faintest smell of damp earth clinging to the fabric, as though it had been buried and dug up again. And though the police bagged it for evidence, swabbed it, dusted it, they found nothing, no prints, no DNA, nothing but Emily's. And by morning, rumors had already begun to slither through town. Stories about ghosts, about something in the woods, about curses. And while Claire begged the officers to check again, to keep searching, something else happened the following night. Something that would turn the Larson home into the epicenter of a nightmare no one could wake from. Because at midnight, the knock came again. And when Claire opened the door, her knees gave way, because the backpack was back again, the same backpack, sitting in the same place, even though it had been locked in an evidence room at the station just hours earlier. And this time, when she unzipped it, she found a single sheet of paper tucked inside, with writing scrawled and jagged, childlike letters that made her stomach twist. She belongs to the dark. Claire dropped the paper as though it had burned her fingers, the words crawling across her mind in a voice that didn't feel like her daughter's at all. Too jagged, too raw, as if something had guided her hand. And though the police dismissed it as a cruel prank, insisting some sick local was tormenting her, Claire couldn't shake the certainty that those words were more than a threat. They were a declaration, a warning, maybe even a promise. And when she demanded to know how the backpack had returned when it had been locked away in an evidence locker, the officers exchanged glances they thought she didn't notice. The kind of glances that hinted at their own unease, because the truth was, they had no explanation, the cameras had shown nothing, the locks had never been tampered with, and yet at midnight, the backpack had appeared as if summoned, and so Claire begged to keep it, to hold on to it, convinced that somehow Emily had touched it, that if she clutched it long enough she might feel her daughter's warmth again. But as the days stretched into a week, then two, and the search teams dwindled, the backpack never stopped coming back, each night like clockwork, appearing on the front porch no matter where it had been stored, no matter if it was burned, shredded, buried, or even submerged in water. It always returned at midnight, whole and clean, and each time, there was something new inside. Sometimes a crumpled drawing Emily had made years ago, sometimes a toy she'd lost in kindergarten, once even a lock of her golden brown hair, tied with a ribbon Claire knew had been lost since Emily was 5, and the items grew more disturbing, as though whatever force was behind this was rummaging through the past, digging up pieces of Emily's life to torment her mother. But on the 13th night, Claire found something she couldn't rationalize, not even in her wildest grief. A Polaroid photo, fresh, the kind you had to shake to dry. and in it was Emily, her face pale, her eyes wide and glassy, standing barefoot in the woods Claire had walked with search parties, wearing the same outfit she'd worn the day she vanished, except her mouth was sewn shut with black thread. And behind her, barely visible in the blur of trees, was a figure, tall and crooked, with arms too long and a head that seemed to tilt at an unnatural angle. And though the image was grainy, Claire swore she could see its eyes, two burning pinpricks of white light staring directly into the lens, into her. And she screamed until the neighbors came running, until the police arrived. But when she tried to show them the photo, it was gone, the backpack empty except for Emily's usual school supplies, and the officers started to whisper behind her back, writing in their notes about stress, about trauma, about hallucinations. But Claire knew what she'd seen, knew that something had taken her daughter, something that wanted her to know she wasn't crazy, because each night, the knocks grew louder, heavier, shaking the door in its frame, and by the 21st night, Claire couldn't take it anymore. So when the knock came, she didn't just open the door. She ran outside into the darkness, barefoot, clutching the backpack to her chest and screaming Emily's name, her voice echoing down the street, bouncing off the trees. And for a moment, just before silence swallowed her cries, she swore she heard a voice call back, faint, trembling, desperate, "Mom," and it came from the woods. Claire froze on the porch, her heart slamming against her ribs as the sound of that small, terrified "Mom" seemed to bleed from the tree line, carried on the wind like a cruel whisper. And though every instinct screamed at her to run back inside and lock the door, she couldn't. Because if there was even the slightest chance her daughter was alive, she had to follow it. So clutching the backpack in one hand, she stepped barefoot onto the cold asphalt, each step echoing too loudly in the silent street, until she reached the edge of the woods, the place where search parties had trudged for days and found nothing but silence. And there it was again, fainter this time, the same trembling voice. "Mom, please." And she stumbled forward, branches clawing her arms, leaves crunching beneath her feet, the world narrowing to that one fragile sound, and deeper she went, until the glow of the streetlights behind her vanished, leaving only the moonlight to guide her, and the trees seemed to twist unnaturally, their branches bending like arms reaching down to catch her hair. But she pressed on, whispering Emily's name until her throat felt raw. And then she saw it, the flash of pink against the ground, her daughter's shoe, perfectly placed as if waiting to be found. And beside it, another Polaroid propped against the roots of a tree, the edges damp with dew. And in the photograph, Emily was closer now, clearer, standing in the same woods, her sewn mouth streaked with dried blood, her eyes wide with terror. And this time, she wasn't alone in the frame. Her tiny hand was clutched in the gnarled grip of that crooked figure, its long fingers wrapping around her wrist. And though its face was obscured in shadow, Claire could see the suggestion of a smile, stretched too wide, too unnatural, as if mocking her. And when she staggered back, clutching the photo, a branch snapped to her left, heavy, deliberate, like a footstep. And then another, closer, and the air grew thick, damp, reeking of earth and rot, until she swore she could feel something, hovering just out of sight, watching her with those pale eyes she had glimpsed in the photo. And panic seized her, raw and animal, forcing her to turn and run, branches whipping her skin, roots clawing at her ankles, until at last she broke through the tree line and collapsed onto her front lawn, gasping, clutching the backpack like a lifeline. And when she dared to look inside, she found the Polaroid she had just seen, tucked neatly between Emily's notebooks, as though the backpack itself had swallowed it, claiming it, preserving it. And that was the moment Claire realized the truth. The backpack wasn't just returning. It was a messenger, a vessel, carrying pieces of her daughter back to her, but also carrying warnings, hints, taunts, as if whatever had Emily wanted her to keep looking, to keep following, dragging her deeper into its game. And that night, long after the police had dismissed her frantic retelling, long after the neighbors closed their blinds and whispered about her losing her mind, she sat alone in the dark, the backpack at her feet, listening to the clock tick closer to midnight. And when the knock came again, she didn't flinch, didn't even hesitate. She opened the door wide, as if daring whatever force haunted her to come inside. The door swung open to nothing but the night, a hollow stretch of darkness that seemed to breathe on its own. The porch bathed in pale moonlight, empty except for the backpack once again, waiting neatly like a loyal pet. And Claire felt a shiver crawl up her spine as she reached for it, her fingers trembling, because she knew now it wasn't just returning. It was being delivered, set down like an offering. And when she bent to pick it up, she noticed something different this time. The fabric was damp, dripping slightly onto the welcome mat, and when she touched it, the moisture smeared across her palm thick and dark. And in the faint glow, she realized it wasn't water at all but blood, soaking through the seams, staining her hands, and with a cry she unzipped it, half terrified of what she'd find. But inside there was no flesh, no gore. Only a single journal, small, battered, the kind Emily used to scribble in before bed. Except this one wasn't hers. The handwriting inside was jagged, frantic, impossible to read in places. And the entries were short, almost like confessions. "The woods are hungry. She walks with me now. You can't take her back." And as Claire flipped through the pages, the words grew darker, almost chanting, repeating over and over. "The dark owns her. The dark owns her." And at the very last page was a drawing Emily, drawn in shaky pencil, standing between two trees, her face expressionless, her mouth nothing but a line of black stitches, and behind her towered the crooked figure, its hands outstretched, claws curling around her shoulders like chains. And when Claire touched the page, the ink smudged beneath her fingertips as though it had only just been drawn, fresh, still wet. And that was when she heard it. A sound from upstairs, soft and deliberate, the unmistakable sound of a child's footsteps padding across the floorboards, and her blood turned to ice because she was alone in the house, or at least she thought she was. But the sound continued, slow, steady, each creak of the floorboards descending closer to the staircase, until she could see the faintest shadow stretching across the wall, too small, too fragile to be anyone but Emily. And for a moment, hope surged so violently in her chest it hurt, and she whispered her daughter's name, her voice breaking. But when the shadow reached the bottom step and the figure came into view, her stomach dropped, because it wasn't Emily at all. It was something wearing her daughter's shape, a pale figure with hair hanging in damp strands, eyes hollow and too wide, her small frame swaying unnaturally, as if every joint bent wrong. And in her hands, she carried something Claire recognized instantly, something that made her scream before she could stop herself. The pink backpack, clean and perfect, even though Claire still held the blood-soaked one in her grip. And the figure tilted its head, lips sewn shut with black thread. Yet somehow, from deep in its throat, came a voice that wasn't a voice at all but a chorus, layered and broken, whispering in unison. "She belongs to us now." Claire staggered backward, the blood-soaked backpack slipping from her hands as the thing wearing Emily's shape stepped closer. Its movements jerky and puppet-like, as though some unseen force yanked its limbs forward. And though every fiber of her being screamed to run, Claire found herself rooted to the floor, her body betraying her as those hollow eyes fixed on hers, unblinking, bottomless. And then, without moving its stitched mouth, the figure dropped the clean backpack onto the floorboards with a thud, and the sound seemed to echo far too long, like it was falling into a bottomless pit. And instantly the house changed. The lights flickered, the walls groaned, the air grew colder, carrying with it the stench of damp earth and decay, until Claire realized with mounting dread that the house itself felt wrong, stretched, distorted, as if the woods outside had seeped into its bones, warping it into something else, something alive. And when she dared to glance at the backpack, the zipper slid open on its own, slow and deliberate, and inside was something Claire had prayed she would never see. Emily's school picture, recent, folded in half, and scrawled across her smiling face in the same jagged hand as before were the words, "Dig where the roots are deepest." Claire's vision blurred with tears as she looked up, but the figure was gone, vanished as suddenly as it appeared, leaving only the reek of soil behind, and before she could think, she heard it again. The voice, faint but clear, her daughter's true voice this time, trembling and desperate, calling from outside, "Mom, help me, I'm cold." And something inside Claire snapped, the paralysis replaced by a wild, feral determination. So she grabbed a flashlight and ran into the night, barefoot, her skin numb against the gravel, following the sound into the woods, deeper than she had ever dared go before, until the world behind her disappeared, and only the whisper of leaves and her daughter's cries remained, pulling her toward an ancient oak that loomed larger than the rest, its trunk twisted, its roots sprawling outward like veins gripping the earth, and the air around it pulsed with wrongness, a steady thrum she could feel in her chest, and she knew without a doubt this was the place. The roots, the message, the heart of whatever had taken her child, and she clawed at the soil with her bare hands, dirt caking beneath her nails, her breath ragged, and the deeper she dug the more the earth seemed to resist, heavy and wet, until finally her fingers brushed fabric, soft and familiar, and she let out a sob because it was Emily's dress, the one she had worn the day she vanished. But as she pulled it free, she realized with horror it wasn't just her dress. It was her daughter, or at least what was left of her, because Emily lay curled in the shallow grave, her skin pale, her lips blue, her eyes sewn shut with the same black thread. And yet her chest rose and fell, faint, shallow, as if something unnatural kept her breathing, and Claire screamed, shaking her, begging her to wake. But as she did, the ground trembled beneath them, the roots shifting, tightening around her ankles, pulling her down, and the earth itself split open as that crooked figure emerged, taller than she remembered, its limbs unfolding like branches, its face nothing but a jagged grin carved into shadow, and its voice, low, guttural, echoing through the trees, growled, "She was chosen. You dig her up, you bury yourself." Claire clutched Emily's frail body to her chest, sobbing, refusing to let go as the crooked figure loomed above them, its shadow stretching impossibly long across the clearing, swallowing both mother and daughter in darkness. And the roots tightened around her ankles, pulling with such force that the bones in her legs felt like they would snap. But still she held on, whispering over and over, "I won't let you take her, I won't let you." Her voice breaking into a scream, and the figure tilted its head, amused, its jagged grin widening until it split the darkness itself. And with a voice like rusted metal grinding together, it hissed, "You can't save what belongs to the dark." But Claire refused to believe it. She pressed her lips to Emily's sewn eyes and prayed, not to God, not to anything she'd ever known, but to the very woods themselves, begging, bargaining, offering her own life in exchange. And for a moment, the roots stilled, the air heavy and waiting, as though the forest was listening. Then Emily's body twitched in her arms, the faintest gasp escaping through her stitched mouth, muffled, broken, but alive. And Claire's hope surged, wild and desperate. But the crooked figure roared, the sound rattling the trees, and the ground beneath them cracked open, revealing a chasm of writhing roots and shadows reaching upward, grasping, pulling, and Claire knew there was only one choice left. So with everything she had, she pushed Emily upward out of the grave, whispering, "Run, baby, run," even though she knew her daughter couldn't see, couldn't even cry out. And as the roots released Emily, carrying her fragile form toward the edge of the clearing, Claire felt the earth seize her instead. The roots wrapping around her arms, her throat, dragging her down into the soil. And the last thing she saw before the darkness swallowed her was Emily, sprawled in the moonlight, weak but free. And for a fleeting second, she thought she saw her daughter's eyes flutter open, tears slipping down her pale cheeks. Then everything went black. When morning came, the search teams found Emily lying unconscious beside the oak, her mouth sewn shut, her skin cold as ice but alive. They never found Claire. The hole beneath the roots was empty, no trace of her body, no sign she had ever been there. Only the pink backpack remained, resting neatly against the tree, spotless, zipped, waiting. And though Emily was taken to the hospital, the stitches removed, her breathing restored, she never spoke again. She never even looked at anyone, her wide eyes fixed on something no one else could see, something in the corners of rooms, in the shadows at the edges of her vision. Every night at midnight, she sits up in bed, her head tilting at that unnatural angle, her lips pressed shut as though the thread was still there. And without fail, a knock echoes through the house, soft but deliberate. And when her caretakers open the front door, there it is, the backpack, waiting on the porch, as though the woods had never let her go, as though they were only lending her back, and inside, tucked neatly between her notebooks, are words scrawled in jagged letters no child could have written. She belongs to the dark, she always will.